Devotion. It's a powerful thing. It focuses our hearts, steadies our choices, rewires our motives. Devotion, you might say, is the soil out of which Christ-likeness grows. And no one understood this like the first followers of Jesus. In Acts 2, we read, "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer." These early Christians knew and understood one thing clearly. Jesus was worth their allegiance. He was worth their steadfast, ardent, wholehearted commitment. And so together, they chose to be devoted.
When she arrived in India, it wasn't with flash, fanfare, or drama, but with a lifelong yes that would show itself in thousands of small, costly decisions. Born in Ireland in 1867 to Christian parents, her time with the poor started early in life and culminated with a calling to serve the forgotten and used children from the streets of Dohnavur, a small village in the tip of southern India. You see, many of us won't know her name because Amy Carmichael was not famous for one spectacular act, but for a lifelong, quiet, stubborn, consistent devotion that began when she said yes to Jesus as a young woman. Now in her 30s and living in a place where children were regularly sold into servitude, Amy said her ministry of rescuing temple children started with a girl named Preena. Having become a temple servant against her wishes, Preena managed to escape, and Amy's home became her home. Then this one open door turned into another, and another, and another, until slowly but surely, Amy's house became a refuge for many who had none. For more than 50 years, Amy Carmichael refused the easy life in Ireland and lived among people who knew prostitution, poverty, and slavery. It's believed that during her time in India, she rescued more than 1,000 children, and her prolific writing is considered to be a major factor in the eventual outlawing of Indian temple prostitution in 1948. But what makes Amy Carmichael's story significant is not the scale of the rescue, but the pattern of the life behind it. Devotion in her case looked like this: wake up and serve. Do menial tasks with no one celebrating. Consistently care with few appreciating. She said things like, "Faithfulness in little things is a very great thing." Her commitment was shown in not one glorious moment, but in 1,000 small sacrifices that together formed an uncompromising posture. In her books, Amy talks about how over time, all those small sacrifices changed her, formed her, discipled her. You see, she was no longer simply a woman who helped children. She became someone whose heart was to protect the vulnerable, whose character was shaped by humility. She became a person whose courage looked more and more like Jesus. Friends, today we begin a new series. We're calling it Devoted. And it's not a series about leaving your life and moving to an impoverished region of the world, although God may call some of you to do that. It's not even a series about doing something great for God, although I hope some of you will in fact do some great things for God. This is a series about the power of simple, consistent devotion. Because here's the problem. We don't often enough question our devotion. We live in a world with such a rush and advance culture that we rarely stop to ask, are we going the right direction? Are we devoted to the right things in the right ways? And perhaps most important, are the things that we're devoted to shaping and forming us into becoming who we want to become? Friends, I hope you know this. We are all becoming. Every person in this room has been and continues to be in the process of becoming someone. So the question isn't, are you becoming, but what are you becoming? Who are you becoming? We're all being formed by the choices we make, by the commitments we make. We are all being formed by what we are devoted to. And even though this process may at times be undetectably slow, one day everyone in this room will look a person in the mirror and ask the question, do I like who I see? Was I intentional about what I allowed to form me? Or did becoming just happen to me? You see, some in this room will be formed by big decisions or major life events, but most of us, most of the time, will become the product of thousands of little decisions that add up over hours and days and weeks and months and years, shaping us into who we will eventually become. Here's the question. What are you pursuing? What are you chasing? What are you devoted to that's shaping you? Friends, I'd say this question is at the heart of Jesus' mission. It's at the heart of his invitation to come and follow. Come be devoted to me, he says. Come, let me be the one that forms and shapes your life. We have a word for this. It's called discipleship. Disciples in Jesus' day were simply people who committed their entire lives to learn from their rabbi, to become like their rabbi in every way and how they thought and spoke and acted and lived. You see, discipleship is way more than just knowing or understanding. It's about becoming. Here's a great question. Who or what is really your rabbi? Because everyone is a disciple of something. And Jesus' offer to all of us is come be discipled by me. Come chase after me. And when we take this offer from him, follow Jesus, be a disciple of Jesus, then go and make other disciples. If we put that calling into language that fits our world today, it might sound something like this. Becoming like Jesus and making him known. That's our mission. That's the mission of our church. That is our mission because it's his mission. To follow him so faithfully, to be devoted to him so fully that he's the one who is forming and shaping us. That 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, we'll look in the mirror and think, wow, I really have become like Jesus. Now, doesn't that sound great? I'm guessing right now that if I asked, hey, show of hands, who wants to become more like Jesus? I'm hoping most of you would just like throw them up. Some of you are just like going for it. We're getting more Pentecostal. Let's do it. Preach. Yes, Dave. Yes, I want to become more like Jesus. Well, then here's the question. How? How does this mission become reality? That's what our series is about. Some of you know that we have around here what we call 7 distinctives, 7 little pictures of what it looks like to be like Jesus, 7 visions of who we want to be and become as a church community. Here they are. Worship fully. Pray constantly. Trust radically. Engage inclusively. Relate authentically. Hope relentlessly, and love extravagantly. Again, this is just for us a practical picture of what it looks like to be like Jesus in the world. But again, how? Because to be real, when I read, we love people when they least expect it and least deserve it, I'm not always great at that. I mean, sometimes when I'm focused, when I'm deep in my message and I've been like rooted in prayer, I can conjure up extravagant love. But I'll tell you this, the drift of my heart, the drift of my soul is towards sometimes love, not extravagant love. It's towards stingy love or even selfish love. In fact, my natural human instinct is to love people who I like when they do what I like. That's what I love. So, how do I become like Jesus, who taught and modeled extravagant enemy love? How do I become like Jesus, who trusted God so radically, even in the most uncomfortable situations? How do I become like Jesus, who worshiped God with all of his life and who was constantly connected to his Father and who never put on airs but lived in transparent, open relationships with people? How? How does this happen in me and in us? That's what the series is about. In the video, one of my favorite lines says, "Devotion is the soil out of which Christ likeness grows." This is an image for our series. What soils should we plant our lives in such that we begin to grow into people who look more and more and more like Christ? Friends, in the end, this series will be very simple, but if you let it, it will be deep. We're going to talk about three things. 3 pots, 3 soils of devotion out of which God likeness will grow. Today we are going to start with the first one, the first soil. So if you have a Bible, grab it. We're going to be in John chapter 15 today. If you're using a Pew Bible, it's on page 876. And as you turn, I'll tell you that at the very beginning of John's gospel, there's a fairly underwhelming scene where 2 potential followers walk up to Jesus and they ask him what seems to be a very benign question. "Rabbi," they say, "where are you staying?" The Greek word here for staying is the word meno. It's a word about presence and proximity and connection. It means abiding or dwelling or remaining with someone. And this word, this idea of menoing, actually becomes a theme in John's story of Jesus. In fact, all the way at the end of Jesus' life in John 15, when he's giving final and critical instructions to his followers, he uses this word again and again and again and again. I'll translate it in the passage here, abiding, but again, it means to dwell with someone in a deeply connected way. To abide, to dwell with someone in a deeply connected way. Here we go. John chapter 15, I'll start in verse 1. We're going to read a lot of scripture here, so just settle in. Jesus says, "I am the vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, so that it will even be more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Abide with me, as I also abide with you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must abide in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you abide in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not abide with me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now abide in my love. If you keep my commands, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and abide in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command. Love each other. I want to talk about a few things, a number of things from this passage, but first and foremost, I want us to see that Jesus' message here centers on growth. He's talking in this section about deep internal transformation for his followers. As you read, you'll notice that the word fruit comes up over and over and over again, especially at the beginning, but also at the end. That you might go and bear fruit. Fruit, he says, that will last. Friends, fruit in the Bible always has to do with Christian character. We have a lot of ideas of what Jesus means here by fruit, but scripturally, he's talking about what's happening inside of you. He's talking about you becoming like him. The most obvious example of this is Galatians 5 that says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. In other words, Jesus is saying this: my ardent desire is that my followers would experience the transforming power of becoming like me on a deep soul level. Now, if we only had the second half of this passage, if we only had the second part where Jesus kind of gets into like what he wants us to do, he talks about obeying his commands, he talks about reading his word, he talks about loving each other, he talks about prayer. If that's all we had, we'd say, okay, here's what it means to be Jesus' disciples. Let's get busy. Let's get to it. Let's do it. Let's discipline, actions, tasks, religion. Let's go. But if we jumped to that, friends, we would actually miss the heart of his message. Because he spends the entire first part saying this: in order to grow, in order to become, you must have an organic, vital, living connection with me. The core of this message is Jesus wants us to meno with him, to abide with him, to be with him. In other words, before you jump into doing, make sure you're abiding. And Jesus describes what it means to abide. He says, you want to know what an abiding relationship looks like? He tells us, did you catch it? I hope so, because what Jesus says here, I think, is so crazy that if we grasp it, it has the power to radically change the way we do faith and church and even all of life. Verse 15, he says, I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. Jesus says, at the very core of what it means to be a disciple is a deep, loving friendship with him. Abiding is about friending. And we all know what marks real friendship, right? Friends love to be with one another. Friends share life with one another. The best friends, I'd argue, are honest and vulnerable and safe. Places where you can share the joys and the struggles of life, your successes and your failures. I experienced this maybe for the first time significantly in college. My roommate, Justin, who I didn't actually meet until the very first day of school. Like, my parents drove me down. We walked into the dorm. I met Justin for the first time. It's like, hey, Dave, nice to meet you. Justin, we're going to live together in this little 10 by 10 room now together. I don't know you, you don't know me, but here we go. And by the way, this was no small feat for us because Justin was the tight end on the football team, a little bit bigger than me. It was not a big space. We shared a room. We shared a bunk bed. I was on top because, I'm the alpha. No, I'm just kidding. We shared a room and a bunk bed, but we also shared life. We'd lay up at night and we'd talk about joys and struggles and challenges and heartbreak and love and doubts and fear and faith. This is what Jesus wants with you. Yes, he wants to be your teacher, your shepherd, your savior, your father. Jesus wants to be your Lord. All of those things are true, but he also wants to share life with you as a dearly beloved friend. Balthazar Gracian says, true friendship multiplies the good in life and divides its evils. Jesus says, I have called you friends. One thing we see in John 15 is there are basically two kinds of branches in this story. There are friend branches and there are non-friend branches. But if you read closely, you'll notice that at first glance, on kind of a superficial level, both branches seem to be abiding in Jesus. When we start the story, they both are externally connected to the vine. But the story goes on, and upon closer inspection, some branches are producing fruit and some aren't. Here's a question. Why are so many Christians so not like Jesus? You ever wonder this? Doesn't this passage give us the answer? They look like Christians on the outside. They look like they're connected to Jesus at first glance. They go to church. They wear cross jewelry. They have Bible verse bumper stickers. They may even talk a good game. But underneath all of that, they aren't friending. They aren't mennowing with Jesus. They're not connected to the source of what actually grows a Jesus heart in you. Why? Why? Why would you not abide? If Jesus said, I want to be your friend, who in here would be like, nah, I got enough friends, Jesus. You're not making the cut, right? Why would we ever consider not accepting friendship with Jesus? Why don't we take up his offer to menno with him? Many of us, myself included, I think, can relate to this feeling. We live our lives believing in Jesus, even spending some time with Jesus, but so often we feel like instead of like really abiding with him, he's sort of over here. Not far, not like estranged from us, but not always as close and connected as we want him to be. I'll say it this way. Why do we often experience Jesus as near but not close? A couple reasons from this passage. Here's the first. Disobedience. What Jesus says right in the middle of this passage, and it's important to understand, is this: if you keep my commands, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and abide in his love. Jesus says obedience fuels connection, but nothing kills connection like disobedience. Friends, if you are trying to plant your life in the soil of friendship with Jesus, but there's sin in that soil, the sin is going to massively impede your growth. You see, sometimes people will read this passage and they'll think, well, here's the real answer, right? All I have to do is follow the rule. All I have to do is be obedient to Jesus, and then that will automatically create abiding. It's what he kind of seems to say here. But think about it this way, because Jesus is saying something a little different. If you had a child and they followed all the rules you gave them, they're like the perfect kid, just like Pastor Ashley was as a kid, but you were not emotionally connected to them, would you say, this is exactly what I want as a parent, right? You just keep following the rules. I don't care if we're close. No, that's not what you'd say at all. You'd say, I'm glad you're obeying, but I want more. Now, what if the reverse were true? What if you were very connected to your child, but they just kept on disobeying over and over and over again? You'd say, hey, I'm glad we're connecting. I'm glad that you feel this emotional bond with me, but your disobedience is undermining our connection. This is Jesus' words to us. He says, disobedience kills connection. Unfaithfulness will ruin your intimacy with God. And I bring this up because some of you are like, Pastor Dave, I've tried this. Like, I come to church and I give money and I even serve and pray, But here's the truth. You've got a glaring place of disobedience to God in your life, and it's killing your connection to Christ. But this is why confession matters. We don't talk about confession that much in the evangelical church, but it's important. Confession matters. Why? Because it's us saying to God, God, I don't want my disobedience to come between us anymore. And furthermore, when you practice confession with the Lord, you know what you're saying? You're saying, we're really friends, because you can share all your worst failures with your closest friends. See, disobedience will destroy, but Jesus wants something so much more for us. He says, I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. He says, if you can not let disobedience ruin our connection, you can have complete joy. Don't let disobedience rob you of what Jesus wants for you. By the way, the Greek word here for complete is the word pleroo. It means literally like filled to the brim. I'll explain it this way. You know that feeling of emptiness that sin leaves you with? Like, sin is so sneaky because on the front end, it promises big and then it underdelivers, right? It feels like it's going to really satisfy. I mean, it tastes so good, but the aftertaste, that's another thing, right? I mean, it feels so good to gossip. I mean, coming out of your mouth, you're just like, oh, it warms my heart to tear that person down. Right? I probably shouldn't say, but you know, right? I mean, it feels so good. Remember when you were in high school and you cheated on tests? This is a confession moment. I mean, it feels so good. You sidestepped all that studying and you still got an A. I mean, it feels so good to cheat. It feels good to slander. It feels good to cuss. Or watch that sketchy thing on TV or on your computer or on your phone. Like, it feels good in the moment just to make that purchase or have that drink, or eat that food. But then, what does sin do? It leaves you feeling empty. So you think you need more. And you go back again and again and again. Abiding with Jesus will never leave you empty. Disobedience will kill your connection, but here's another thing that'll kill it: impatience. What Jesus offers us here today is not instant. He doesn't say, come abide with me, but let's do it real quickly because I don't have much time. No, friends, abide is a slow word. Jesus offers us faithfulness to something that will produce fruit over time. If you owned a vineyard, you'd understand this, because a new branch on a grapevine will typically grow for at least one whole year before it even starts to produce fruit. In other words, hear me, church, your time with Jesus today may not create patience in you today. Your time abiding today may not produce joy in you tomorrow. In fact, it may take your connection to Christ months or even years to produce the kind of fruit in your life the New Testament talks about. But that's not the dopamine hit world we live in, is it? That's not the timeline that addiction or escapism or materialism wants to offer you. Their offer is now. Sin satisfies quickly. Abiding satisfies ultimately. But we want it now. We want it tomorrow. We want it yesterday. So here's what we do. We try to fruit without friendship. This is like the most classic church person response to the gospel there is. We try to fruit without friendship. We say, hey, I've tried the prayer thing, Pastor Dave, and the listening to God and the scripture reading and the life and the constant conscious. I've tried that, and it's just not happening for me. So I'm just going to sort of do it myself. I mean, we're Americans. We can do this, right? I mean, we can be loving. We can be joyful. We can practice patience. We can work on peace in our lives. We can conjure it up. Most of you are you're not trying to attach to the vine, you're just trying to produce the fruit. And for a while, you might fool people. You might even fool yourself. But apart from Jesus, you can do nothing. It's a sham. And it will fail and it will not last. Now, I have some bad news. Because this passage tells us that while disobedience and impatience will kill your becoming, your transformation to be like Christ, it offers us something that will in fact help. Do you know what it is? You want to become like Jesus? You want to grow the fruit of Christian character in your life? You ready? Here's what will do it. Suffering. Every branch that does not bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. In this chapter, Jesus says, even those who abide will be pruned. So, either way, either branch, whether you're connected or disconnected from Jesus, the clippers are coming. In other words, Jesus says, in this life, there will be hurt and pain and difficulty and struggle, and we don't know how that will happen or when it will come. We have no control of that. But when we're connected to Jesus, when we're abiding and when we're friending, pruning will make us more fruitful, not less. In other words, when we abide, suffering won't destroy us, it will grow us. Hardship won't crush us, it will build us. Here's a great takeaway from this passage. We prepare for pruning by abiding. Prepare for pruning by abiding. Prepare for pruning by being deeply connected with Jesus in a dearly beloved friendship relationship. That's the part you can control. You think you can control life? You think you can control your circumstances? Good luck. You think you can make fruit? Good luck. You can't control the fruit making, you can't control the pruning, but you can stay connected to Christ. Friends, Jesus talks about this reality in so many ways, but the message from him is always the same. He says, if your life is built on God, when the storms come, you will stand. Now, I want to finish up by showing us why this idea of abiding and like having intimacy with God, that's the language we're using here. We want to be a church that plants our lives into intimacy with God. Why does that change our understanding of church? Because this can all feel very individualistic, right? Like, I'm just going to leave here and I'm going to go and I'm going to have my time with Jesus. Just me and Jesus. He and I, just the two of us. We can, right? It feels like that a bit. But our series is about deepening our devotion to Jesus together. Together is huge. So can I get just a little Bible nerdy pastor technical with us here just for a second? Just indulge me, okay? Here we go. Verse 5, Jesus says, the very heart of the passage, the climax of the whole message, he says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you abide in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Do you notice that the word you in that passage shows up 5 times? You. And when we read the verse in English, it just sort of reads, but in Greek, in the original language that it's written in, here's what it does. The first you is plural. I am the vine, Jesus says, and you together are the branches. He's talking to the group. He's talking to the community. He's talking to the church. But he continues, if you abide in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Those use 2, 3, and 4, they're singular. He's talking about you. But then he finishes. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Any guesses? Plural. Plural, singular, 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 plural. It's a plural, singular sandwich, people. Now, you're not nearly as excited as I am because you don't see what he's saying yet. But here's what he's saying. He's saying, you abiding in me, like all of you, means that each of you must abide in me, individually you. But if you don't, you won't have the power to be who you, all of you together, are supposed to be. Friends, following Jesus, friending Jesus is not just individual and it's not just communal, it's both. Do you know how essential your abiding is for our church to be a community that functions in a deep connected place with Jesus? Do you? Do you know how essential your abiding is for our church to be a community that functions in a deep connected place with Jesus? Your quiet time is not just about you, it's about us. Your prayer life is not just about you, it's about us. Your worship is not just about you, it's about us. Our worship is not just about us, it's about you. Marginal enthusiasm. Friends, please, Cedar Mill, I need you to see that your life connection with Jesus is actually intertwined with my life connection with Jesus. I need you. You need me. We need each other. Friends, your devotion to living as a loving friend of Jesus Christ will not just impact you. Whether you do it or don't do it, that will have impact on the other people of this church, on the children of this church. You think it doesn't matter, but it does. It just seeps out of you and into them. The number one way we raise up the next generation of Jesus followers who live boldly and courageously and rightly for Jesus in this world is very simple. Be a friend to Jesus. And not just on Sundays. Not just for an hour. Friends, this next week, we're going to get very practical. We're going to talk about how to do this, how to start to grow in walking in intimacy with God. But this week, the question is very simple but significant. Do you want to grow? Do you grasp how central and essential friendship with God actually is? And will you lean into intimacy? Will you lean not into religion, but into intimacy, into friendship with Jesus? If yes, friends, if you're in or if you're even just interested, I want to offer you this final song just to consider it. Consider your friendship with Christ. Consider your connection to the Almighty God. We're going to close by singing this song. It's called Abide. A little on the nose for the sermon, I thought, but it's a new song for us. I'm going to invite you to be seated because you've not heard it before. I want to invite you just to listen. I'm going to invite you just to sort of let this song wash over you and speak to you. Let it lead you in prayer. And if you catch on and want to start to sing, please sing. But a couple of lines that I want you to notice. It says, we depend on you. I depend on you. Friends, we want to be a church that doesn't just believe in God, but that depends on God, that has connection and intimacy with God. Here's another line. Draw me close and teach me to abide. God, draw us close to you. This song and this sermon is about us as a community saying, we want to be close with you, God. We want to be people who, when others experience us, they sense that we have been with you. Friends, one of my favorite stories in all of Scripture is Acts chapter 4. Like brand new followers of Jesus hauled off in front of the religious authorities, and they're being questioned, they're being interrogated, and here's what they walk away with. They say, these people just seem to be ordinary. There's nothing special about them, they say, just ordinary people. But then they take note. But these people have been with Jesus. Friends, what if that's what the world experienced in you and me? Not, man, they really know their Bible. Not that they've got strong religious convictions. Not they have the right political. Man, I don't know. There's just something about those people from Cedar Mill Bible. They just They seem to have been with Jesus. They sort of reek of Jesus. They just sort of give off this aura and this presence of having been with him. Isn't that the highest compliment we could get? To do that, we have to actually be with Jesus. So consider where God is calling you today to step in and lean in and walk in a closer, beloved friendship with God. We offer you this song. I was thinking that the difference between religion and faith, or like church and church, is really just this, what we've talked about. Friendship with Jesus. It changes everything. It changes everything to walk with him in deep, abiding friendship. That's on offer to us, church. We can plant our lives in that soil, and from that, I know good things will grow. If you need prayer today, we're shifting it up just a bit. Our leaderships, our elders and Women's Leadership Alliance are going to be back in the Connect room, and they would love to pray with you and pray for you. If you need prayer today, if you just need to talk to someone, if Jorge's story just resonated with you, thank you for being vulnerable, my friend. If that resonated with you or something else, go back, get prayer, have them anoint you with the oil, but don't leave here today without connecting with someone else so that you can walk and shine for Jesus in this world today, because it's his power and it's his strength that goes in us. Amen? All right, God bless you, friends. We'll see you next Sunday.